Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the number one network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the number one sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada. We love you in Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south, in the land of the free and the home of the brave, on a beautiful July the 31st, 2020. Ronaldo Deportes, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Well, Charlton, I'm doing okay. I've been waiting ever since Patrick Mahomes signed that new contract to loan me $20, and I haven't heard anything from him.
Yeah.
I sent a message to the Chiefs office, just break me off 20 and I'd be good. But I want to thank the frontline healthcare workers, nurses, doctors, first responders. I know you have a tough battle going on every day out there with this COVID-19, with the infection rate rising every day and the death total increasing in America. But you stay strong. You keep helping everybody out. We love you.
Yeah, we love you. And I want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars. And all around the world, just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear Welcome to the Show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing from 3,000 miles away. And I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You can also follow Big C Sports on Spotify. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Apple TV, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. Big C. I even heard Don Lemon copy the Big C pause last night, but we'll never pause on our Veterans Crisis Hotline. They really are experienced in helping veterans and their loved ones get help. Big C, why is that so important to you?
Charlton, we need all of Americans pitching in, helping veterans. Just like with this COVID-19, we're losing some 22 veterans a day to suicide, a horrific disease that has infected this country for a long, long time, Charlton, and it doesn't seem to be any end in sight. We look at our administration, who seem to be devoid of thoughts of the veterans. They haven't really done anything trying to help the mental and financial and physical situation of our veterans. And many of these guys have just turned to no end, and suicide they felt was a way out. People look at that as an embarrassment on a family. No, you need to try to help those families before this horrific disease takes place, Charlton. We lose a lot of young kids also to suicide in this country, but the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number is full of people, Charlton, that are there to listen and to help you emotionally get through these situations, and hopefully not that you don't go over the cliff. So don't ever hesitate when you see somebody with mental anguish or struggling to give out the National Suicide Hotline number. It's not an embarrassment. It is an aid to save someone's life.
Pick up the phone and make the call. 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. If you're online, simply go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net, and they can get some help. Also, very happy to be affiliated with Valley Homes Weekly TV on Dish TV, DirecTV, AT&T Uverse, TV 53, home of the San Francisco Giants, and the Say Hey Kid, just tell them Big C sent you. The goal is simple: recruit 100 real estate brokers, put their property listings on TV, just like McDonald's does it, car dealerships do it, sports teams do it. And you can watch TV and real estate work for you. 800-772-8624. That's 800-772-8624. For you looking for opportunities in real estate, go to bigcsports.pacwm.com. That's bigcsports.pacwm.com. And you can see opportunities there. Big C, you were saying that you were wondering if Patrick Mahomes could loan you $20. I've always learned that when you have somebody rich around, like my grandfather, he would always come around and he'd go to the restroom, and all the grandkids would go right to the restroom when he was done, because he always had change that fell out of his pocket. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, but I don't know if Patty's, Mahomes' pockets can hold what he has and stuff.
Yeah.
But I was only asking for 20. I mean,
Okay.
I know he can get changed for 100 somewhere.
Yeah, that's funny. You still might find it. He has the kind of money where you might find it in the restroom if that makes more sense to you. Big C. Some guys do whatever they want to do when they want to clean themselves up. It's all fair and love and war. I just want to give a quick shout out, Big C, on this beautiful happy Friday. And there's a lot of people in life that you look around and you see what they're doing. You're proud of them. Zarlina Maxwell, Vice President of Programming, Sirius XM Radio, looking hopefully to talking to you with Big C Sports coming up soon. So really, God knows a lot of good things are planned. I wanna just jump on some things that I want to finish up. It happened yesterday with President Barack Obama, and then John Lewis, the eulogy, Bill Clinton, President Bush, President Clinton, I should say, want to pay respect to that. And that's 3 previous presidents that show how much we've lost in the Trump era. People know what class is. And even if people know when they're with somebody who has no class at all. They just know it, even though they're embarrassed to say something, but they know it. But I wanted to just touch on something that John Lewis had mentioned. It came out in the paper. I didn't see it till last night when I got home. It was the New York Times. It says, "Together, you can redeem the soul of our nation," by John Lewis. And the vote is the most powerful, nonviolent change agent that you have in a democratic society. You must use it. It is not guaranteed. You can lose it. And that's why I want to encourage people to just pay attention to people that had class. And again, to the great Representative John Lewis and the president that spoke so highly of him. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I'll go one step above that. And I want to go back to the late Martin Luther King. And there's always been a saying in life, well, things will get better. And Martin Luther King said, that's not how you look at it. It's what can you do to make things better.
Yeah. We got to look at what we can do. And each individual, I would just say you gotta go forward in life and always try to make things better. It starts with the man in the mirror. Really appreciate that. Big C, I want to touch on some things. I know you talked about Patrick Mahomes, and people think you're joking. You just wanted a $20 bill, like a card. You can just sign it. I wonder if someone signed their name on a $20 bill the way they do on a sports card, if that bill would be worth more money. Does that make sense to you, Big C? Your thoughts?
It all depends on who the individual is, Charlton.
Yeah.
There's a lot of bills that are framed around the country. People would pass athletes money and even plain pieces of paper to get an autograph. If you look at some of the old signatures from years ago, baseballs, what they're worth having a certain signature on them, Charlton.
Yeah.
So certain athletes, their autograph is worth big bang.
Yeah, it's worth big bang. So maybe he'll go get that $20 bill and don't spend it. Make sure you let it appreciate, Big C. When it comes to sports franchises, the most valuable sports franchise in 2020, the Dallas Cowboys, they topped the world, and in fact, they topped the universe at $5.5 billion. You should be asking Jerry Jones for $20, not Patrick Mahomes, Big C. The NFL features 27 of the top 50 teams, the only NFL teams not to rank among the most valuable franchises in sports: the Buffalo Bills, Cincinnati Bengals, Cleveland Browns, Detroit Lions, and the Tennessee Titans. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, when you think about what Jerry Jones paid for the Dallas Cowboys back in 1989, I think he paid some $300,000 for that organization back then, some record sum in the NFL for purchasing a franchise. Now it's worth well over $5 billion. But when you think about the top, valued franchises in America, you think about the Dallas Cowboys, you look at the New York Yankees, you look at the New York Knicks, Charlton, you look at the Los Angeles Lakers, you look at the Golden State Warriors. These are the top valued franchises in the United States. So when we think about these owners and the reason why they want to get back to playing sports, their money's on the line. But, and then it comes down to, Charlton, how much money is enough? Do you really need any more? Are you going to be hurting if you lose $500 million in a year when you're worth $5 billion, just one of your entities that you own?
Yeah. I think a lot of people, Big Z, they rich people don't often tip. I've heard a lot about athletes that had a lot of money. I mean, hundreds of millions of dollars. They go to a restaurant, eat dinner, and they always go to the bathroom before the bill came. So sometimes they don't want to even lose $1, Big C. NFL and the NFL Players Association, Big C, they agree to a plan that allows players to opt out of the upcoming season if they're uncomfortable with COVID-19 health protocols in place. In high-risk individuals, they could opt out and receive $350,000 stipend, with those less at risk would receive $150,000. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, and this is the reason why you've seen so many players opt out of this upcoming season. And at last count, I believe it's 36 NFL players that have opted out for the season of 2020.
Yeah.
The thing about that, Charlton, is that they're opting out and they're going to get a guarantee. If this season does not complete, Charlton, they still get that money because they chose to opt out.
Yeah.
Players who play the season may not get their full salary, Charlton, if the season ends or if the season does not start.
Yep.
And once this deal is confirmed, the players are going to have 7 to 9 days to finalize whether they're going to opt out the season.
Yeah.
But I think this is good measure from the league and Olive Branch being extended, saying we understand the health risk.
Yeah.
And if the league didn't recognize that there were health risks, they wouldn't have offered this money to the players.
Yep.
But they know that people are going to get sick from COVID-19. I mean, baseball is a testament to it.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. And people, the good thing is people are getting better. I know Aroldis Chapman, he's been cleared to come back and play. There's a couple of players that are down in the NBA bubble. They've gotten better, and they're going forward. Maybe there is light at the end of the tunnel. But Major League Baseball, the schedule changed again by the Cardinals COVID-19 test. 15 games postponed, including 3 today. That's 20% of today's games, Big C, will not be played due to positive tests around the league. You know how somebody says, trust me? Just trust me. And sometimes trust is not enough, but as again, people are getting better after they go through some things. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, you think about it. They got 30 teams in baseball.
Yeah.
And already 20% of the league's scheduled games in this amended season have been canceled or postponed, however you want to put,
they're on pause.
On that.
Yeah.
But, we're talking just a couple teams that have caught COVID-19. If you catch 10 teams, Charlton, with COVID-19, that's a third of the league now that can't play.
Yeah.
Because they can't play their opponent.
Yep.
If you get 8 teams, Charlton, that come up positive for COVID-19, that's more than 50% of the league that will not be able to play games. At one point, as Rob Manfred, do you say, okay, we just can't go on with this?
Yeah.
We cannot compete when we have 8 teams with positive players that have been, so that team cannot play. So now we have 16 teams. Only 14 teams will be able to compete. You can't have a season like that, Charlton.
Oh, yes, they will, Big C. They only put so many games on TV at the same time, Big C. They'll find a way because they got to get that money. In fact, when you think about something, this is a different year, 2020. Major League Baseball, it would play 7-inning doubleheaders in short of the 2020 season. As a league, the union reached an agreement, Big C. We could see short and doubleheaders played as early as Saturday, August 1st, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, everything you look at about baseball is being amended. They're going by the seat of their pants right now. I mean, realistically, if you look at the structure of the baseball season right now, it has no structure, Charlton. It's just what up's next. It's like who's on first, what's on second, who's on third.
Yeah.
That's basically how baseball is operating right now. And you're talking about going 7 innings in a doubleheader. I mean, a lot of times when you get to the 7th inning stretch, that game is tied.
Yeah.
And so if it's tied, you're just going to call it and call it a tie and then move on to the next game, Charlton? So, I mean, when you look at all the abbreviations right now that baseball is going through, it seems like they don't have a clue.
Yeah, they don't have a clue because it's not them. It's not they don't have themselves in the frying pan. And if you're not in the frying pan, it's easy to say, oh, we're going to play. I love when I hear, Big C, especially some of these college commissioners. There's even 37 states that are going to play high school football. They're saying they're just going to push it back until late September, if that makes any sense to you. But oftentimes they'll say, we are going to go and play the season. That's like saying we are going to go off to war, and guys are sitting at home like Trump and Mike Dickham when they ran away from serving the country. But it's all about who's going to go out there and play or not. I know there's a lot of things that the league will have to do just to see if they can keep the money flowing in. Just like anything else in life, if you cut off the money, Big C, a lot of people get real nervous, even if it's not their health on the line. I wanna talk about some NCAA because I feel like everybody's driving around with their check engine light on, and it comes on for a reason. It doesn't come on just for the sake of coming on. But NCAA, if you look at college football teams, they unveil helmets with a splash guard to protect the players from COVID-19, like in a hospital. It's another sign that football is coming in the fall. We know it's going to happen. Several teams unveil guards on the front of the football helmets, Big C, designed to protect players from droplets that pass the COVID virus from one person to another. Now, the plastic guards, essentially, it's the normal football visor that's extended to the bottom of the face mask. It's really no safer than what they already been using, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I'm thinking about this, Charlton, and how are you going to breathe? I mean, how do you keep this shield from fogging up on a player? I mean, you go outside on a humid day, or even on a rainy day, and you got all this sweat building up inside the helmet. How are you going to keep that face guard clean so that you can see? And they're talking about droplets just in the face. What are they going to put on the players' arms and hands, Charlton, to prevent them from having droplets come off of their body and touching onto another player's body?
Yeah.
I mean, this is another far reach by professional and collegiate sports to say that we're doing everything to safeguard the players. But the last I checked, even with that face shield, Charlton, you're still breathing. Passages fly through the air. It's not just droplets.
Yeah.
It's the air that you're breathing back and forth. And when you think about a highly competitive athlete, you're breathing at a real high pace, Charlton. You're huffing and puffing, and you're blowing harder than the other guys. I mean, you ever see linemen standing there on a long drive up and down the field, the defensive linemen, they got their hands on their waist, Charlton. They're breathing hard. Look like they could suck all the air out of a hot air balloon and stuff. So they're going to be passing passages. I don't care what you put up as a safeguard.
Yeah.
Baseball, I mean, you look at baseball players, these guys 50, 60 yards apart from each other.
Yeah.
And they're catching COVID-19. You're talking about guys breathing in each other's face and you're saying they're not going to get it.
Yeah, I think I said this maybe being flippant, Big C, but I remember when I went to college, even in high school, our coaches talked to us about STDs. You're going to have men and women interacting, and they said it might look good to you, but you might want to make sure you stay healthy. So they talked to us about STDs, and some guys, they couldn't care less. They said, man, I'll just get an injection or take a couple of pills and I'll be fine. And I really believe that that's how COVID-19 is being looked at by a lot of the young athletic kids. That maybe that's a silly thing to say, but it just seems like a lot of guys have that attitude about it. I want to stick with the world of college sports just for a moment. There's something called the MAAC. They joined the growing list of NCAA conferences, Big C. They're canceling fall sports in 2020 due to COVID-19. And that decision, it comes as the NCAA, whether or not to proceed with fall championships. The league will feature 11 former schools spread across New York, New Jersey, Connecticut. It's Canisius, Fairfield, Iona, Manhattan. There's Marist, there's Monument, Niagara, Quinnipiac, Ryder, and St. Peter's, as well as Siena, Big C. They're all trying to just test fate with their check engine light on. They're talking about pushing back the fall sports, but it seems like they're still open to saying, well, maybe we don't have to push back, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, there's a common theme coming out of the East Coast, starting with the Ivy League.
Yeah.
Is that these divisions are saying we're not putting our student athletes at risk. And really, we have student athletes. Academics are first. And you can tell the conferences where academics are first, Charlton.
Yeah.
Because they're canceling all these fall sports. They're saying we're not going to put the kids out there. Because the thing about it, Charlton, the biggest thing that's going to come from all this COVID-19 and forcing athletes to play are going to be the lawsuits. The schools are not going to have protection against lawsuits, putting their players out there knowing that they get COVID-19. And all of these athletes are not going to recover. Everybody doesn't recover. You might survive it, but you don't recover 100% where you can participate anymore. And so that's what's really going to happen down the road, is that we're going to see a panacea of lawsuits coming from athletes, Charlton, that have had to go out there and play in this COVID-19 pandemic. So this is going to be a ripple effect of how it affects society in many ways. People think because, okay, I've gotten over this.
Right.
It's the internal problems that you keep in your body, Charlton, that people don't see. The damage to the lungs, the organs, Charlton, the breaking down of body tissue. This is the problem that affects people with COVID-19. You talked last night about the young lady, I believe in Chicago, that had the double lung transplant.
The transplant, yeah.
Transplant. And you think about that this woman, she was 28 years old. She lost both of her lungs. They would no longer function and keep her alive. And if not for somebody being on the organ donor list, she would not have survived. So this person lost their life. She survived because somebody else lost their life from an accident or whatever.
Yeah.
But this is the damage that people don't see. They keep talking about, well, they survived. They survived COVID. No, you don't. Your body is never 100% again once you've had COVID-19. It's like having a major surgery on a joint. That joint is never 100% again. It might be well enough to play, but it's never the original joint, Charles.
Yeah. And again, everybody reacts different to different things, Big C. I look at New York Yankees pitcher Aroldis Chapman. His only kryptonite is Jose Altuve, when he's trying to pitch the ball to get him out in an inning. But I think it's something to pay attention to. New York Yankees no longer have any players, according to the Yankees organization, that were with COVID-19 difficulties. Aroldis Chapman's the last one that was cleared to return, and that's today. So he's the third major leaguer for the Yankees that tested positive, and I believe his was July 11th at the start of the summer camp. And when you look at some of these younger players, just like anything else, some people, they heal fast from a broken bone. Some guys play sports with a broken bone. The other guys, they got to sit out for the half the season. They have a different tolerance to pain, Big C. Even I often wondered, knowing a lot of guys in the world of MMA, it's like, man, how do you play in a sport where someone can elbow you in the eye, kick you in the side of the head, punch you in the nose, and then choke you out, and you're okay if you get through that first round without tapping out? And Big C, a lot of them say it's just mind over matter, and it looks to me, just hearing some athletes here in Northern California talk about it, that have tested positive, they all say they feel fine. I don't know if they're just being braggadocious because they don't want to get their contract in dispute, but it just seems like everybody responds differently. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, they may say that they feel fine, Charlton, but you got to see them in a competitive situation.
Yeah.
And see how their endurance is impacted once they're in actual competition.
Yeah.
You watch Aroldis Chapman. How's his endurance? Is he going to tire quickly, even though he's just a relief pitcher?
Yeah.
How many innings, how many pitches will he be able to throw? You talk about these MMA fighters.
Yeah.
How many of those go out and win a fight after they've tested positive for COVID-19 and their opponent didn't have an advantage over them?
Yeah.
Those are the things you have to look at. What the residual effect is, how well will that athlete perform once they come back into that competitive ring after having COVID-19?
Yeah. I think for one thing, and when someone, I think Manfred mentioned this, about $4 billion that they were going to lose if they did not have at least these 60 games, and they're going to make about $9 billion had they played the whole season, Big C. But when I think about what's happening with calling off the Cardinals and Brewers game, that's a big Midwest rival due to COVID-19 tests. St. Louis and Milwaukee postponing this afternoon's game. And it was announced because a couple of players, Big C. But I really feel, they said there's nobody left at Miller Park Friday morning, but Major League Baseball made a quick decision to postpone the game today, which was scheduled for a 2:10 Eastern Time first pitch after the outbreak within the Miami Marlins, who've had 20 positive tests by 18 players over the past 8 days, and another on Friday, some sources say. So it's still climbing in Miami. So I don't believe that all of these players will not be able to come back and play. I think, at least from what I'm seeing, and like you're saying, we don't know yet because we haven't seen them, what their endurance is going to be like. But I think the league is, they don't stop a league if a player has an STD. They keep playing. And I just think the mindset is treat it like that and wait for some type of medicine panacea to catch up. And that's why they have maybe a reckless regard for it. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, what you're saying is treat the athletes like the U.S. did the Tuskegee experiment, inject the people with syphilis and just see how they function. You can't operate in an archaic situation like that, Charlton, because there's not going to be a serum for this COVID-19. They're not going to have anything for at least another year. You can talk about trial studies and all of that. I know personally, once you catch COVID-19, what the rampant effect is on your body and what it can do to you. And I can pull out a half a dozen other former football players, professional football players, who have had COVID-19, and they will tell you the same thing, that it knocked them down harder than anybody else had ever knocked them down in life before. And this is the thing. We might be retired, but still, you're still a body, and even a retired athlete is in better shape than the average person his age, throughout society. And the effects that it has on you, you also got to understand the torture that you put your body through as a professional athlete. Your body is always vulnerable and susceptible to other things because you've normally had surgery. So that means you had a pre-existing condition. Once you've had surgery, you've had invasiveness inside your body. So as you look at this, everybody is not going to test the same.
Yeah.
But what's going to happen, Charlton, you're going to end up with some athletes on a respirator. I guarantee you that. If you continue with these seasons, you're going to end up with athletes on a respirator. And you're going to say, well, he just wasn't in as good a shape as other guys. No, when you look at, just like I was talking about with the New England Patriots and the New York Giants, when you talked about Cannon and Solder, both of these players opting out. Both of these guys started for the New England Patriots the last time they won a Super Bowl. They started at tackle. Both of these guys have defeated cancer. So they didn't feel it was worth it to go out there and play football, and they've had cancer, Charlton, that they beat. And once you've had cancer and you end up with COVID-19, you may not win that battle. And so that's what you're looking at. And you're talking about homely conditioned professional athletes, but they have pre-existing conditions. They got diabetes. They got high blood pressure. They have lymph nodes. They have cancer. They have a lot of things, Charlton.
Yeah.
And so just because somebody looks good in a uniform doesn't mean that he's 100% healthy.
Yeah, I mean, I want to talk about some of that when we come back from the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause, because I know everybody is different and people respond different. I want to talk about some things when we come back about how people are actually winning the fight against COVID-19. We'll be back in just a moment. All right, we are back from the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts, on Spotify, and so many other apps. And I really appreciate that we can be seen or listened to on so many apps all over the universe. Really appreciate that. Now, I will never say never just because of this. And I know everybody responds to things differently. That's why doctors don't give the same medication to every person. I want to look at the reason why the NBA stopped. It's because of a player by the name of Rudy Gobert. And Gobert was the one that tested positive for the Utah Jazz, and I think Donovan Mitchell, those two. Ironically, in the NBA game last night, it was Gobert that made the first basket and also the last two free throws to help the Jazz get a win over the New Orleans Pelicans. But when I think about it, Gobert, I believe, who had 14 points, 12 rebounds, and 3 blocked shots in the win 41 days ago, this young man, he's the reason all the sports shut down, Big C. So I know there's some guys who don't recover fast, but I know my eyes didn't deceive me when I saw last night when I saw him playing the game. Now, he says he's fine. It doesn't mean everybody's going to be fine. But if there's light at the end of the tunnel, there are men that can run up and down an NBA basketball court and get 12 rebounds and 3 blocks and 14 points and not even being in the best of shape. That's light at the end of the tunnel. So I think they're going to study athletes. There are those who can and there are those who can't. But I think that's a step in the right direction. Study, and I've said this before, they're going to study the athletes to see how we can come up with some type of cure-all to help society. Big C, your thoughts?
Jonathan, we have 155,000 Americans that have lost their lives to COVID-19, from the ages as young as 11 months to 100 years of age. There was just a little girl in Florida who lost her life. She was 9 years old 3 days ago. 9 years old. So when we talk about people, and we've heard all this talk that it doesn't affect children like it does adults, Charlton, there have been plenty of children under the age of 18, over 200 of them in America that have lost their life to COVID-19.
Yeah.
We can look at athletes and say, okay, they're a case study. Yeah, they have better physical condition than the average person does, Charlton. But there's been people who have been weightlifters and bodybuilders that have lost their life. There's been doctors who have lost their lives to COVID-19, nurses that have lost their lives to COVID-19. So as you look at COVID-19 and you say you want to use athletes as a test study, the minute one of those athletes end up on a respirator, is that going to be the test study? Because one wheel, Charlton, when you look at all these college athletes that you can't keep safe, football players, you look at all the NFL. Matter of fact, the Buffalo Bills sent all their rookies home yesterday. The Buffalo Bills sent all of their rookies home yesterday because they had 5 positive tests of COVID-19. They're saying their facility wasn't safe.
Yeah.
And they haven't even started training camp yet. This is just the rookies in. They sent them all home, Charlton, because they didn't want to put them at risk any further. So as we look at a couple basketball players running up and down the court that tested positive, like I said, you can always find a needle in a haystack when it comes to athletes. You're going to find that guy that gets over everything. But there's going to be guys that don't. And when you look at these NBA players, most of them African-American, Charlton, which we know have high-risk health problems throughout their history with their family. And a lot of athletes end up with hepatitis in college because of unclean situations, blood pressure, sickle cell, all type of pre-existing conditions, Charlton, that you're putting yourself in peril for. This is the reason why you've had 36 NFL athletes opt out, because they have pre-existing conditions.
Yeah, and no one's denying that. People have car accidents every day, but people still drive. But I do know if there is going to be light at the end of the tunnel, we got to find the solution. And like Dr. King said, it's about putting your heads together and doing something about making change, whether it's change in social situations, with the NBA, I think, is doing a fabulous job, or really studying medical science. Because let's say there's a vaccine. I mean, who's going to stand in line for the vaccine? I mean, we don't know, because people are affected different ways. But I do want to also, because these are living, breathing examples, you know, that we can talk about the bad and the good. But Donovan Mitchell, he scored 20 points last night, and 8 of his 20, I think, came in the final 5 minutes of the game. And this is the thing I want to look at, too, because when Dr. Fauci says he didn't say we're going to have a cure, but just like high blood pressure, there will be treatments and remedies that help people feel better. It's not like life's over, got COVID-19. I know many people who've tested positive for COVID-19, and they were scared to death, Big C, about a month ago. One lady, she's up in her 50s, couple of kids, husband, and she was nervous. She had a fever for a couple of days. Now she's fine. And her kids are fine. Her husband had to go to the hospital just for a couple of days, and he's fine. But not everybody has that same outcome. But we got to look at the good, because we can't learn how to get better by looking at everybody who doesn't make it. But it's old and young, they're still making it, Big C. Treatments are getting better, Big C. Your thoughts?
And, Charlton, I know somebody here not too far from me, Charlton, that somebody had not heard from him for a couple of days. Family members went by the house. Husband and wife were in the house unconscious. The husband died. The wife survived. Both had COVID-19. How long is an NBA game, Charlton? How many minutes?
About 48 minutes.
48 minutes. You realize during that game last night that you talked about with the Utah Jazz and Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell scoring those points?
Yeah.
During that 48 minutes, 48 Americans died. There was one American died every minute yesterday. So during that 48 minutes of that basketball game, one American died every minute during that game while they were out there playing.
Yeah, and we know people die of overdose. People die of suicide.
But we're not talking about you're putting in parallels that are not the same. Car accidents because you choose to drive the car. Overdoses because you choose to take the drugs. COVID-19, you're not asking it to come into your house. It's something that's unavoidable by most people, Charlton. Car accidents are avoidable if you don't get in the car. Drug overdoses are avoidable if you don't use the drugs. COVID-19 is undiscriminative.
Yeah, it may not discriminate, but not everybody dies. I mean, that's you got to look at too.
How can you compare a car accident to COVID-19? How can you compare a drug overdose to COVID-19? Because those things are voluntary that you chose to start that process. COVID-19, you don't voluntarily start the process.
Yeah, but not everybody dies from it, Big C. I mean, that's just a scientific fact.
But no, I'm asking you, how do you compare those two things, car accidents and drug overdoses, to COVID-19?
Because some people say don't play sports because you might get COVID-19. The same people, don't drive a car, you may have an accident. It's a choice to drive a car. It's a choice to play sports. And we're talking about people deciding to go live their lives.
COVID-19 is not a choice. It's not about sports. COVID-19 is a pandemic. Even if you take sports out of the equation, COVID-19 is a pandemic. You're not inviting COVID-19 to your house. A drug addict invites the drugs into his body or her body when they ingest them or inject them. When you have a car accident, you chose to get into that vehicle and drive. You didn't open your front door on your house and say, COVID-19, come on in.
Well, that may be the case, Big C, but I know we can always look at the macabre side of life and people that don't make it. But if we're going to make it through this forest, if we're going to get through the fog, we got to look at the people that get through it. And that's going to come, that's where the solutions are going to come from. That's what scientific research is for. And based on people who are making it through, they're going to find solutions to help those who struggle. And I'm just saying, we got to look at both sides. That's why science exists. No scientific lab is closing their doors because of COVID-19. The opposite is true. There's more scientists all over the world that have this strong belief, just like the belief that Dr. King had and that John Lewis had and that Dr. Fauci has. They believe there is light at the end of the tunnel, and they're going to find a solution for this, and that's just going to happen. It's already happening, Big C, so I don't want to ignore what's going on with athletes too. But
I'm not ignoring it either. I mean, I understand the search for a vaccine, and eventually hopefully they will come up with something. But have they ever come up with a vaccine for car accidents?
Yeah, they call airbags. You know, they make them safer, anti-lock brakes.
No, the accident happened. That's the car accident. I'm not saying about the person inside the vehicle. I'm saying, is there a vaccine to stop car accidents?
There's a technology to help you survive a car accident now compared to 50 years ago.
Two different scenarios.
No, it's not. But you can't stop people from.
Scenarios.
No, but you got to look at. People are going to die, Big C. We're born to die. We're not going to live forever. But to have, I'd rather trust science. I know people go through things, but I do not want to believe that science doesn't know what they're talking about. There's a reason that almost every American over the age of 40 is taking some type of medication. They're taking the medication because science got together. They got rid of all the negative thinking people. The people said, oh, we'll never have a fear. Dr. Salk cured polio, Big C. People thought that would never happen. Whooping cough is gone. We have the flu that people get over. I'm just saying when a scientist says that we're going to have a solution for this, we're going to have a treatment, and then the cure is going to come after the treatment, I would rather trust them because they've kept people alive for a long time. But that's people can choose to listen to science if they want to. I want to just touch on something because it's also with the LA Lakers and the Clippers last night. They had a great game down in Orlando, of all places. The Battle of LA happened in Orlando at Disney World. LeBron James, and I thought he had a great game, but if Davis really, to me, was the all-star of that game last night. But more than the game, it was great to see the game. But what I really appreciated was that it was coaches, it was players, it was also officials, Big C, that they took a knee. Now, I know Mike Ditka might want to say get the hell out of the country, but his sorry butt never even served this country. He ain't Florida's. But when I saw those men take a knee, I felt like maybe not for the first time, but it's emboldened in my spirit to see that almost everybody said we want to find a way to make sure that liberty and justice exists for everybody. And that made my heart happy, Big C. Your thoughts?
Do you realize the first time that blacks took a stance in sports for social injustice? You remember when that was?
I think it was Tommy Smith and John Carlos.
Tommy Smith and John Carlos, 1968, 52 years ago. They were banned from athletics in the United States. They could never compete again as an amateur athlete. That's what white America did to them at that point. And so, as I always talk about, there's 50-year cycles when things occur. 50 years, why did it take 52 years for people to accept? And if it took 52 years for people to accept black athletes standing up once again in unity for social injustice, what will be the outcome of it? I appreciate what happened last night. I appreciate what Adam Silver did.
Yeah.
He kept his head down and said, I'm going to allow this to happen even though it's against NBA rules. But what will be the outcome of it? What will we achieve? I appreciate the seminal moment that they've given black athletes. 1967, when Athlete had the Athlete Summit down in Miami, and he brought together the top black athletes in America at that time.
Yeah.
And they met about financial and social justice for black athletes.
Yep.
And, then when we see Colin Kaepernick do the same thing, and then 4 years later people say, it's okay now. We cost this black man his career, but it's okay now. No one stood beside. We talked about the Oakland A's catcher that just signed a contract with one of the professional teams with the New York Mets.
Yeah.
That he took a knee in 2017, and he was ostracized from baseball up until 2020. 3 years cost him employment in Major League.
Yeah.
So I like the gesture. I appreciate the gesture, and it's one of those things that we need to have more of. And athletes always seem to open the door.
Yeah.
But who's going to walk through the door and when the door is closed, Charlton? That's the thing. I'm waiting on lawmakers to stand up, and I know you always say you got to start someplace. We started 52 years ago with Carlos and Smith at the Mexico Olympics, standing on the podium.
Yeah.
And being banned from amateur athletics forever. We saw Colin Kaepernick 4 years ago, took a knee for social injustice, just as they did. Banned from professional athletics since then. So as we look at the strides that we tried to make as a culture, Charlton, and we continue to push forward, we haven't given up as a culture. I'm wondering what will mainstream society will do. And I know you don't like for me to say white society, so I'll say mainstream society. What will they do to show that they appreciate what we've been standing for all of these millennials, Charlton, and when will they give us our shot at the big table?
When Carlos and Smith, Tommy Smith and John Carlos, Big C, it was just those two. If you recall, on the podium down in Mexico City, you didn't have officials, you didn't have all of the Olympians. It was those two black men. But just like I say,
the majority of top black athletes would not even participate in the 68 Olympics. When you think about Al Fender didn't go, many of the top black athletes in that era would not go to the Olympics in protest.
Yeah.
They voluntarily did not go.
But just like you asked that question, when will people do better? And I'm think you're seeing it now. It's just like going to an ice cream store and they got great flavors of ice cream, vanilla, they got chocolate, they got, caramel and whatever you like, strawberry, all kind of different mixtures. You can look at it, but if you don't take a lick, you're going to look at it. Like Telly Savalas, how many licks did it take to get the scent of his lollipop, the lollipop that Telly Savalas was licking in the streets of San Francisco? It took a lot of licks, Big C. But have you noticed what I said last night? None of those players have been fined. None of those referees or coaches have been suspended. None of them have had their sponsorship pulled because things are changing right in front of our eyes. You got to eat the ice cream before it melts. But if we don't see it, it doesn't matter what they do. And as far as how long it takes, that doesn't matter either. What matters is it's changing right now. There's a sea change going on in this country. In fact, it's happening all over the world. It's just like the 65 Voting Act. It's just like the march on the Edmund Pettus Bridge. People say, when will they stop beating us? Eventually, the good people are going to outdo the deeds of the evil people. It's always been that way in life, Big C. It's always been. I've heard a woman say her husband was beating her butt. And I say, why you stay in that relationship? Well, you don't understand. I love him, and he only does it when he's mad. But how many times will you stay in that relationship when he's beating your butt? Eventually, she got out, Big C. And the things change because people get tired of it, and you see good people, black and white. That is changing right in front of our eyes, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, things have always changed in society. But we're in the 20th century now, 21st. And what I look at is what we're still fighting and striding for. it would be different if we didn't have the intelligence and everyone did not understand what was going on.
Yeah.
But everyone has recognized the same thing from both sides. Just like when you can have William Barr say there's no systemic racism in the police department. And the police will tell you, yes, there is.
Oh, he's out of office soon. Yeah.
And so when you have the blatant denial in public of opposite of what goes on behind closed doors.
But he's an idiot. He's an idiot.
This is where we have the problem. We need to have the open dialogue in public.
Yeah.
How long have you heard in your lifetime, well, it's uncomfortable to talk about that?
Yeah.
Now is not the time to talk about that.
Yeah.
But damn it, when is the time?
Well,
when will you what will make you comfortable to talk about it?
Go out and vote November 3rd, mail in your ballot before. Barr's going to be out of power soon. He's an idiot anyway. They let white militia.
This was long before Trump, the systemic racism
it's
was
changing,
in.
Big C.
Trump has just been a 4-year Band-Aid on what's been going on. They took the Band-Aid off for 4 years with Trump.
Yeah.
It's been there. It's been there for 400 years, not 4 years, 400 years. We can vote. Yes, we can. But by voting, will that change the feelings of the people who already have this embedded in their culture, in their mind, of how they want society to be?
Yes. That's why you saw everybody take a knee. Nobody got fired. I mean, it's going to take people who are progressive thinkers, Big C. If they're negative, they're not going to vote anyway because they say nothing's going to change. But it's changing in front of our eyes.
I'm not a negative thinker, and I vote. But just because athletes take a knee, Officer Sharman in Minneapolis took a knee also.
Now, that's being cynical.
And that's what they were accustomed to doing.
Yeah, that's...
When will it stop? It's just like having those federal agents up in Portland and Seattle tear gassing and beating people every night in unmarked vehicles and unmarked uniforms. Well, you know, when you look at that, how will that stop, Charlton? Those people feel comfortable abusing American citizens, black and white. They feel comfortable doing that. When I live in the South, where there's a whole lot of oppression, and I'd love to invite you down here sometime, where you can actually spend a week or two and you can open your eyes and see it's a damn, I really didn't realize what you were saying was that accurate. When you see this stuff and it goes on, it's just like at John Lewis's service yesterday. When the oratory of President Obama and Clinton and Bush, when they were speaking,
yeah,
and they could speak heartfelt words, Charlton, because of what they have dealt with in life and in politics. And they could be genuine about that. You know, when President Bush was speaking about him and Lewis, is that they didn't always get along and they fought each other. But at the end, they found common ground and decency to deal with each other.
Yeah.
They may not have always saw everything the same, but this is what they knew. They were trying to reach common goals for each one of their parties.
Yep.
And so when you look at people in life, and they don't want that. I mean, it's different. And I know you're out there in California, a very liberal place. But when you come to places that are not that liberal, where we talked about the rebel flag still being flown down here in the South,
yeah,
they do that because that's a part of their heritage and their belief in separation. And just because they take down that flag doesn't mean that you took down your feelings.
Yeah, not everybody's gonna be on the same side. There's a good and an evil in the world. That's how the good master made it, Big C. But the good show went out. I wanna close out. Well, we still got a few minutes to go. NBA. I mean, I love what I saw last night, and POTUS did not tell Adam Silver get the hell out of the country. Okay, that things are changing, Big C. NBA increased its insurance policy coverage for players to $2.5 million. As the league restarts amid the pandemic. The policy is going to cover both on and off the court injuries, including complications from COVID-19. You know, it's new. Things change when smart people get together, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, they had to increase that insurance policy to get players to play. Because to take it from $350 to $2.5 million, Charlton, to cover you on and off the court,
yeah,
they know that you're going to be within the confines of the bubble in Miami.
Yeah.
Well, Orlando,
yeah.
And so, and they expect players to come down with COVID-19. But the reason they increased that insurance policy because they know that the overall health risk that you have coming down with COVID-19, that it can be severe and you may not recover 100%, as we were talking about earlier in the show.
Yeah.
The NBA sees that. and they increase the liability coverage for the players.
Yeah.
Because they know that everybody will not recover 100% from COVID-19.
You know, this, even if you look on some medications, when I see them run across the TV screen, it says, take this for this problem, take that for that problem, and then at the disclosure says, may be known to cause constipation, diarrhea, headache, vomiting, rash, you know, blood issues, heart palpitations. Like, man, maybe I'll just do okay drinking some eggnog and some gin or with it. Sometimes the complications are even worse than what the medicine's supposed to do for a lot of people.
But Charlton,
yeah.
I take 14 medications a day.
Yeah.
I had COVID-19 that I got 4 months ago. I had 3 surgeries from the COVID-19. I didn't have 3 surgeries from the 14 medications that I take.
Yeah,
I had 3 surgeries from the COVID-19. I got put on more medications because of COVID-19. Okay?
Yeah.
So everybody doesn't recover. People do recover. But I am still struggling with my recovery and trying to get back to some similarity of normalcy from the COVID-19.
Well, thank God for medical science, Big C, because without that, nobody would recover, Big C. And that's my thinking, that medical science helps you get better, not being negative and saying that nothing's going to change. Your doctor had an attitude, you know what, this is going to help you, and it's working, Big C. Following an extensive process with the city of Winnipeg, Manitoba. Something about Canada, Big C. Winnipeg, Manitoba has tentatively been chosen as a quote-unquote hub city for a possible 2020 Canadian Football League season. Now that's pending final approval from, get this, the health and safety officials in that province. Now, I don't believe they have any more dome, well, that's not true. They have a dome stadium in Vancouver for the British Columbia Lions, and they used to have, the Argonauts used to play in the Rogers Center up there in Toronto. I don't know if they have dome stadiums now, but could you have a bubble city without a dome, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, you can. They say you're better off being outdoors. There's actually 3 dome stadiums in Canada. You have the Olympic Stadium in Montreal, where they had the 76 Olympics there. The Rogers Center, as you talked about, in Toronto. They got BC Place, where they had the Olympics. I believe it was 92 Olympics in Toronto, in Vancouver. 92 or 88 Olympics, I believe it was. I'm lost on you.
It's someplace up north.
98 Olympics in Vancouver.
Yeah.
So you got 3 dome stadiums. I know last year the Oakland Raiders and Green Bay Packers played a preseason game
in Edmonton,
in
right?
Winnipeg, Manitoba.
Okay.
But, you know, you're talking about being out on the prairies, a place that's wide open, and a city that, you know, can host that type of event, Charlton.
Yeah.
You know, if you put all the players in a bubble scenario there in one city, it's almost going to be like the NHL.
Yeah.
Where you have, I believe it's Edmonton and Toronto that are the bubble cities for the for the NHL.
Yeah.
And the hockey players.
Yeah.
So if you do that with the football players, put them all in one city, you have a better chance of containing it.
Yep.
Now, the CFL, the Canadian Football League, normally is playing this time of the year.
Yeah.
So they're still, as you said, waiting on the approval of the health officials of that province to okay this possibility of them playing the 2020 season.
Yeah. And see, I mean, I know you told me about your COVID situation. There's a lot of news people that had COVID. I know some personal people that have had COVID. They got over it. Everybody's getting over it. Not everybody is affected by it the same way, and that's light at the end of the tunnel. But I want to ask you, since we're in Canada, I like Canada, Big C. In Toronto, the NHL to restart, it's a small step toward normalcy, Big C, but they're going to start, you know, this weekend. And they're looking at how to get to Lord Stanley's Cup. But I know they're probably skating on thin ice, but it seems like all of sports is saying they're going to look at whatever positive outcome, and they're going to try to go forward. Of course, you may have to work a little harder or exercise a little more or take more medication, but that's light at the end of the If I didn't have high blood pressure medication, I might not be here because I don't have headaches anymore. I don't get dizzy anymore. Man, I'm so stupid to say that. I used to think that was kind of normal. But when I started taking my medication, all that stuff went away. Big C, your thoughts on NHL hockey?
Well, Charlton, I mean, they've quarantined in 2 cities up in Canada, Edmonton and Toronto. I've seen some preseason games. I watched Alan Ovechkin the other night score a hat trick. I mean, he's the most dominant player in the NHL.
Yeah.
Chasing Wayne Gretzky's overall scoring record, Charlton. If he plays another 3 or 4 years, he may get to that point. But the NHL is one of those games, Charlton, that it's must-see live. I know they're going to add an extra 12 cameras for the games up there in Canada, Charlton, to hopefully give the fans at home a better view and perspective of the game on the ice.
Yeah.
So Gary Bettman is doing all that he can to keep the players safe and enhance the viewing of the game.
Yeah, he's going to do his best. Before we're almost about to close on this beautiful Friday, on beautiful Friday, the July 31st, and I know people are going through things, but there are also people coming out of the fog. When you come out of the fog, that means there's light at the end of the tunnel. I love when people come out of the fog, Big C. It is just your opinion. We all have opinions. But I want to get your mindset. I want to get your thoughts on the mindset of some of these top athletes, that they have this indomitable spirit and this will to overcome anything. And that's why a lot of them do, Big C. Where does that come from, your thoughts?
Well, athletes are a different breed of person, Charlton. They feel invincible at all costs. I mean, it's just what makes the elite the elite. There's a lot of athletes who try and just can't cut the mustard, but those of us who have succeeded at the highest level, Charlton, we have that no lose competitive nature in our minds and in our hearts.
Yeah.
Is that we are the best of the best and we're invincible.
Yeah, and I think that life, if women can have babies, I think if God made it so that men have babies, it'd be like one baby running around on the planet. Where would they come? They can't come out the backside, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, there's a lot of male mammals that do rear the children and stuff. Male ostriches, they're the ones who had the age. They don't them, but they had them and stuff. But, you know, when you think about the metabolical makeup of people, Charlton, and the gender, production of a person, this is what nature meant. Yeah,
nature meant. And speaking of nature, there's a good old boy. He plays golf. His name is Bryson DeChambeau. They might want to check him for the stuff they accuse Barry Bonds and Sammy Sosa and Mark McGuire. That's just my opinion. He says he wants to live to be 140 years old. Well, me too. I want to live to be 140. And he says because of science, that he thinks a lot of things are possible. I know a lot of people that have been dealing with science, and science has helped improve the life of so many people, including you, including me. 140 is a long time to live, though, Big C. Your thoughts?
Only thing I want to do 140 years is in my car.
Wait a minute. You don't want to talk. That's Smokey the Bandit. You don't want to have those Smokies looking at you down south, Big C. That's all fair, love, and war. I want to just cover one more story before we get into this beautiful, happy Friday weekend as much as we can. We got to always look at the bright side of things. There's only one way to look. You can look up or you can look down. We got to look up, Big C. A lot of baseball games are on pause. NBA basketball, they're playing in the bubble. Giannis is doing his thing against the Boston Celtics over in Orlando. I know the Texas is coming in town to San Francisco tonight. And I don't know if we're going to still have this positive outlook on baseball by the mid part of August if more teams keep coming up. You know, you shut the league down. All the sports were shut down because of Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell testing positive. They came back and had a good game last night. I wish those men nothing but the best. I hope that we can learn from them how to go forward. But do you still feel that baseball, that we can get through the month of August, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, it's going to be real tough for baseball to get through that. Like I said, Charlton, you end up with 8 teams positive in Major League Baseball. You have the majority of the teams unable to play. That means 16 teams will not be able to compete.
Yeah.
And if you get to that point, Charlton, I don't know how you continue the season.
Well, Pac-12 football, they're talking about playing a conference, Pac-12 only against Pac-12 only. That's to keep all the TV money. And they're talking about pushing back the start of the season into late September as opposed to some of their games. I think USC was scheduled to play Alabama August 31st, I believe. So they're saying they're going to start, based on now, that they're going to get going sometime late September. I don't think that's fair for the kids, but that's just my opinion, and everybody has their own choice. Big C, back in the day, there's a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young men, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in this sports universe?
Well, Charlton, I'd like to look towards equality, but highlighting the lasting impression of segregation in a black family was kicked out of a swimming pool down in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, Charlton, because they were swimming in separate lanes aside a white swimmer, Charlton, that was in the pool, and she called a lifeguard and asked him to call the police to have these people kicked out of the pool. We still got a long ways to go when we look at the world of sports and competitiveness. And once again, I want to thank our frontline healthcare workers, nurses, doctors, first responders. I know your struggle is real out there every day, but you've been the strongest force that we've had in America over the last 6 months. Stay strong, stay safe, and we keep praying for you.
We keep praying and we keep hope alive. We keep hope alive, and you can too. Every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide, when you follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As we always tell you, there's never, ever an excuse for racism or domestic violence. If you know any man, woman, or child going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and ask for help, because no man, woman, or child should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.